Thank you. The Fast Company Honor last March was really great fun, and we were a couple of days feeling really quite full of ourselves and getting lots of emails. And then, 48 hours later, I get an email from a faculty member who's complaining about the lack of parking next to their office. And then I got a call from a parent who was really unhappy about a bill or something. And then it culminated when I got a tweet on my Twitter account from a student who said, "Hey, Mr. Innovation, the toilet in my dorm room is still broken. You think you could innovate on that for a little bit?" I was like, okay, we got to stay grounded. Good lesson in being and staying grounded. So Virginia has talked a little bit about who we are as an institution, and I want to sort of focus more on some of the ways we think about innovation, but you can sort of read for yourself the kinds of things. And I think this Wednesday we're going to be listed in Forbes magazine, though I'm not sure. Reporters have been calling and fact-checking. We don't know what they're fact-checking about, so, but they've hinted. So we're very proud, and it's really a great team. We started, of course, the university itself, the main campus, is about 2,800 traditional age undergraduates. We do a certain job there, and that job is both education and coming of age. We have another 1,000 graduate students, many of them from abroad, 60 nations. In the Millyard, 5 years ago, we moved our very small online operation, which was at about $30 million in revenue. 5 years later, those 25 people have grown to just under 300 people. We're right across from MUR with revenues of this year, 121 million. Climbing towards 200 million by 2014, which will make us one of the 5 largest not-for-profit online providers in the country. I've talked about who we serve. Also, I want to say, proud that we serve as many veterans, more veterans than any school in the state. We have a history of innovation. It's really in the DNA of the place. I like to think that we've been able to sort of leverage that as someone who's been there for 9 years now, but it's been there for a long time. In 1998, we did a 3-year degree program. And only now has higher education sort of caught up with this notion of competency-based 3-year undergraduate degree programs, and it's getting a lot of attention. You see the other programs that we've talked about here on the list. College for America is a new program that we're launching in January of this year, and it's geared towards the people least well served by higher education. These are people who are handling packages at FedEx's Memphis plant and the midnight shift. These are line workers in ConAgra's food processing plants in Ohio. So it's a remarkable program. We've driven the price down. If you do TurboTax, there's that little ticker on the side that tells you what your refund's looking like. So we have $2,500 a year right now. We keep trying to drive it down. So our goal is to drive that number down. But that program is the first of its kind. It's a competency-based program with no classes, 120 competencies. And you can go through as fast or as slow as you like. If you can establish your math competency on day 1, you're done. Check that box and move on. Why do we cling to this antiquated notion that drives instructors so much of higher education? It's called the Carnegie Unit. And the Carnegie Unit is this idea of the 3-credit-hour class. Many of you, most of you sat through 3-credit-hour classes. The Carnegie Unit was developed by Carnegie not to measure knowledge. It was developed to figure out how to pay teachers. Like, what is the unit of work we'll use? But it has become deified within higher education. So today, what we're really good at telling you is how long someone sits in a seat, typically 14 to 15 weeks. But what we're not very good at telling you is what they've actually learned. So when you, as an employer, or somebody looking at a transcript, see a B- in sociology, what do you know? Someone did a little bit better than the person who got a C+ in sociology, but that's about all you know. And what we're trying to do is think about the competencies, the can-do statements that we want to describe or use to describe and define what an education means, and then not tether people to time. Let's make time flexible, and let's make learning the non-negotiable event. You can't cruise through with a C in writing. You either have mastered the competency or you haven't. It's a very exciting program. It's got $1 million from the Gates Foundation grant, which described this as a high-risk, high-reward program, because the goal here is not to touch 1,000 students. It's not to touch 10,000 students. The goal here is to touch hundreds of thousands of students by 2018. How do we get, and this is about the need. So education is unparalleled in terms of its force as a social change agent, right? Nothing equalizes the playing field like education. And we are fond in higher ed sometimes of beating up on K-12 because we see more and more students who come to us underprepared and not ready for college work. But in fact, higher education is also dropping the ball. There is ample evidence that we are graduating too many students who don't have the skills that employers expect. When we have been talking about our new program, College for America, I always evoke the notion of, you've hired that college degree holder with a 4-year degree who can't write. And the nods in the room are like, absolutely. This touches a button. So people are questioning the quality of what we do. We don't educate enough people. It's increasingly out of the reach of too many people. You've got 40 million American adults who have some college credits and no degree. If they don't get a college degree in an economy in which 70 to 75% of all new jobs will require at least a 2-year degree, they are practically condemned to the American underclass. And we see this widening gap of have and have-nots. So we have a critical shortage of college-trained people. I think we are 12th in the world now for our generation of learners, adults under the age of 35 without college degrees. So we're slipping ever more. We have approached this challenge, this problem, in a variety of ways, but all of them essentially follow a discipline of innovation. And in our case, Clay Christensen, many of you know his work around disruptive innovation, based on his 1996 book, The Innovator's Dilemma, sits on our board. He's an old friend from graduate school days, so I always want to acknowledge his influence in the way I think about these things. And there's some basics that we follow. And I think one of the things I see in a lot of my peer institutions is a sense of, oh my God, higher ed's changing around us. There are lots of forces that weren't there before. For-profit higher education, ed tech startups, lots of stuff going on the regulatory front. We need to do something. But that need to do something has to be funneled through a discipline, a theory of change. And the theory of change we use is based on Clay's research and work. So here it is. Separate any group that is doing disruptive innovation. First key distinction, sustaining innovation is doing something you do now better. And lots of smart people are working on sustaining innovation in American college campuses. We should not denigrate the good, creative, smart work that's happening there. Disruptive innovation is game-changing innovation, when you want to change the rules of the game, right, to break out in a new way. You can't do that from inside the incumbent organization. It's almost impossible. American industry is littered with great names, companies that seemed unassailable who aren't with us today. Digital Equipment Corporation, Wang Computers, we go down the list. The great retailers. Look at what's happened with bookstores since Amazon came along. It's littered with these because they try to do it from inside. And it's not that they're not smart, it's because their culture and their structure is mitigated against the game-changing innovation. The desire is to pull the thing back in. So when we wanted to do something different with online and really drive growth, the first thing we did is we moved it. We took it away from the main campus. And then the second, then we gave it permission to break rules. And our faculty worked with us to allow this. And they're an unusual faculty in this because one of the great impediments to change in higher ed is traditional faculty governance. A lot of higher ed is built around the traditional faculty. These are really good and smart people. And they're not wrong for feeling like they're endangered. The movement of technology has displaced traditional faculty roles in ways that we should acknowledge and work to sort of think about how we sort of address that. But our faculty gave us some permission to play by a different set of governance rules, and we were able to move very quickly into the market in a way that lots of our peers have not. We want to change the culture. We knew that we couldn't change the culture if we stayed on the main campus. Culture is the hardest thing to change. Business models, not so much. But culture and people, that's the messiness of the human heart, and the way that those people come together in an organization is culture, and that's difficult. There's a great NPR piece from some long time ago, perhaps you heard this, where they said, we were doing something that was really hard one day, and we said, this should be easier, this is not brain surgery, and then we thought to ourselves, what do brain surgeons say in the same situation? So they went off and they sort of talked to people at, they said, they talked to somebody at Columbia Presbyterian and said, we always say, hey guys, this isn't rocket science. So of course they go to NASA, and NASA says, hey, this isn't theoretical math. That's the really hard stuff, right? No one can figure that out. They go to Cal Polytech, and those guys say, we all say, hey, guys, this isn't sociology. Human beings are the hard thing. So we move them. Disaggregate key functions. I'm going to come back to that in a moment, so let's hold on to this. But basically the notion is the places that are ripe for disruptive innovation are very mature industries that are vertically integrated, where you have one major incumbent who owns all of the pieces. And what insurgents can do is come in and take a piece of that, and I'll talk about that. Understand the job to be done, in our case, by our students. Too neglected. This was in Clay's second book, and it's not talked enough about. So when you hear people make broad statements about higher education, which higher education? Which job? Because we do many jobs. For 18-year-olds, we do a coming-of-age job. And in reality, and it's a little bit sad that if you go along on most campus tours, not a lot of questions about the academic program. Most 17-year-olds assume they're going to get a decent education, but they really want to know about the climbing wall and the food court and the dorms and how long do I have to wait to get a single and a lot of other stuff. And this is true all across the country, not just on our campus, because their job is something different. The job they want to be done in some large measure is a coming-of-age job. So leadership opportunities, sports, and lots of other things are important. The job that we do for, by the way, what percentage of college students are of that cohort? 17, 18-year-olds, 19-year-olds living on a campus, full-time and studying. What percentage of all of Americans' college students? 14%. Just 14%. The bulk of American college students today are working adults, juggling work, juggling family commitments. In this case, if you think about it, education is their third priority. And they have a different job that needs to be done. Their job is about, get me the credential I need to have a better life. When we roll out College for America, we're working with Blue Cross Blue Shield Anthem. And they're rolling it out with their call center, customer service people. These people make $24,000 a year. They work from home. They're on the phones all day long. This is the degree that gets them a different job, that lets them move up in the organization. God love Blue Cross for sort of acknowledging that. Rethink the business models once you know your job, and then serve those that are not being well served already. This is also critical. You'll see a lot of people innovating for their existing customer base. They're your existing customer base because they're happy. They don't need the innovation. This is one of the things that plagued the big computer companies when they were trying to sort of do something innovative. They go back to their customers and say, hey, look, we've invented this really cool thing our engineers came up with. And their customers say, hey, we buy your big computer. Why do we want to buy a microcomputer? You had to find another customer that isn't being well served. In our case, with College for America, we're going out to the most marginalized adults in the workforce, the people who don't tend to get served, right? These are folks. So at ConAgra, we went in and we said, look, guys, we're doing this January pilot. We explained the program. We need 5 to 10 volunteers. All 75 hands go up. We walked to the folks at Anthem and said, look, we need 5 to 10 people, 60 call center workers in there. All hands go up. There is a hunger, a need, a desire for these people to have a better life, to have a better life for their kids, but we haven't been able to come up with the solutions for that. So I'm going to do a quick, I love this clock, a really quick sort of example of what I mean by disaggregation. Take a look at how education was sort of mostly created. If you think about the creation of, I'm looking like there's a slide here. If there's the creation of the course or the program, it all sort of stood in the hands of the faculty member, right? The faculty member develops the course, chooses all the appropriate text. Curate is the sort of term of choice these days. They would curate the learning content, add their content, prepare their lectures, deliver it, intervene when students struggle, advise students as they get through the course, assess those students, and then use that performance hopefully to revise the course. And that's worked really, really well when you were dealing with small residential colleges and finite populations of students. But we're trying to do something at scale. So at 100,000 students, this model doesn't work very well. That faculty member walks away with their course. What do? You've got all these students to serve. So we can disaggregate. So today in higher education, you've got instructional design teams working with subject matter experts, taking this piece, no longer vertically integrated. You've got instructors and sometimes others. So if you want to get online, take a look at Open Study. Open Study is a peer-to-peer learning environment with 150,000 users. And instead of turning to your instructor, if you're working on math, you go into Open Study and you find out all the people who are working on math at that moment. And you throw your question out there. Response times under 5 minutes. Accuracy rates over 92%. It's pretty remarkable. And when people give you bad advice, the wisdom of the group comes in. And they say, no, that's not right. You got to remember to change this factor, right? So it's really a very powerful learning environment. We have third-party tutorial services. In our online program today, we turn to an outside vendor, Smarter Thinking, for our tutorial services. Assessment often separated now from the people who give the instruction. And then again, revision going back to the subject matter. So I'm just listing all of the people who are working in these verticals. And what's happening is that you have a kind of blowing up of higher ed's delivery models today. Traditional higher ed still holds and is the right solution for traditional undergraduate residential life with that job to be done. But for this other huge job to be done, what happens here is new possibilities and new models that are really, really exciting. And what this has allowed us to do is really drive down cost. Traditional campus programs cost about $112,000 in tuition. Our 3-year program, which also takes place on the main campus, down to $84,000. The Advantage program is one where we, for the first 2 years, do all the courses in the morning, allow people to work, they commute, they drive down costs $10,000 a year. And then, of course, the next 2 years are more expensive, the final 2 years, but it drives down costs to $73,000. Our online programs, you can do the whole of your undergraduate degree for under $40,000. And by the way, the myth that for-profits are cheaper is a myth. Not-for-profits are much more affordable, and this is why Phoenix is finally sort of, in the last year, lost 60% of its value. The market is finally sort of catching up to that reality. And then College for America seeks to deliver a full bachelor's degree for $10,000, competency-based and faster, and really designed for adults. We got there we were inspired in great part by an interview with Mohammed Yunus from the Grameen Bank, one of the founders of microcredit and microlending. And he was asked in an interview, how did you come up with this notion of microlending? And he said, I was sitting one day and thinking, what do traditional banks do? And maybe I'll just do everything the opposite. They lend to men, I'll lend to women. They require collateral, I'll require none. They force you to come to the bank, I'll go to the village. They make big loans, I'll make little loans. We went down this list. So when we talked about College for America, we know what the problem is. We have an underserved population of adults out there. They're not well served. They're at the lowest part of the organizational food chain in their employer worlds. How would we change it? What would we do different? So we said, well, a lot of sort of traditional higher ed is built around the faculty. Scheduling, the way we organize knowledge, the domains of disciplines and fields and specialties. It's really a reflection of how graduate study occurs. What would happen if we took students and put them at the heart of the learning model? So in College for America, what we do is we work with students to identify an accountability partner. Who's the person that's going to keep you on track? And we did a pilot this summer, design pilot, and one woman's accountability partner was her 11-year-old daughter. And she's a food service worker. And she was 2 weeks into the program and was like, why am I doing this? I don't have time. I've got to start driving to this, and the groceries, and the dishes are not done. And it was her 11-year-old said, Mom, you've been talking about a college degree for years. You can't drop out. And she said to us, it was like a slap. She said, you're right, and got focused again. Who's your accountability partner? We work with them to identify mentors in their workplace. So one of the places we're rolling out is a retirement community. And it's got a very large population of retired bankers and business people and doctors and lawyers and academics. And they are going to roll this out with their landscapers and their housekeepers and their dining services workers. And we've tested, we piloted with them. They love this program. And what they said is that if you think about it, the people who live there have an intimate relationship with these people. There's people who clean your house. You know them. You know them by their first name. So they're actually setting up a mentoring program where the guy who's the retired accountant does an after-work session on Wednesday on math. Hey, if you're working on your math competency, come in right after work and I'll help you through those competencies. I'll help you through the homework. So people are being really creative about this and investing themselves in the model. But the notion is really to sort of lean on social capital and social networking theory and platforms to give people learning support that isn't the traditional allows us to drive cost out. Now I'm down to my last minute. We don't think about competencies as classes. We think about small learning units. So a low-level competency is mastering the paragraph. You say, wait, is that college work? I will tell you that probably 50% of incoming college freshmen on most campuses need help mastering the paragraph. But at the high end, the work is absolutely college level, and it's sophisticated, and you would say, this is great. I mentioned time. I mentioned the mentor part of this. And the idea here is that we have this myth that adults want to come to our campuses. Our campuses are not friendly places for the people that we're serving in this model. Right? Our campuses are full of people that don't look like them. We use weird acronyms. Our office hours end when they're just getting off of work. It doesn't work very well. So this notion is let's go to their community for one. And I'm down to the last 8 seconds. Here's the notion. This is a piece I did for the Christian Science Monitor. When we get to the place where we can define exactly what learning is, something higher ed tends not to do very well, and we can assess it and be really rock solid about our assessments, then at that point, we can blow up the delivery models. And College for America seeks to do that. So I'll end by telling you that it's the first of its kind to be approved by our regional accreditor. We're approved by the New England Association. And it's the first program to be in front of the Department of Education for approval at the behest of Undersecretary Martha Cantor. So we're very excited about it. And the goal is change the world.